talk about committees and committee leadership. So there are 4 different types of committees that we are going to discuss. Those are standing committees, select committees, joint committees, and a special type of joint committee that is called a conference committee. So let's start with standing committees. Standing committees are permanent. Their job is to review and investigate and review bills that are in specific areas of public policy. Now, as of the writing of this book, in the legislative session that was in session at the time that the book was written, there were 20 standing committees in the House and 16 standing committees in the Senate. Every legislative session, they go back and reevaluate, and sometimes they add standing committees, and sometimes they reduce standing committees. The other committees, select committees, meet for to address a particular issue, and once they have studied, issued a report, recommended legislation, recommended further action, then they are through. I'll give you an example of a select committee. There was a committee, and this has been years ago, that decided that they were going to investigate performance-enhancing drugs in baseball. So the people were appointed to the committee. There were some Democrats, there were some Republicans. They commissioned the Mitchell report. I don't know who Mitchell was. He goes and he does an investigation. He comes back to them with the report. Then they start hauling baseball players in and asking them, did they take any performance-enhancing drugs? Do they know of anyone that took performance-enhancing drugs? And I just remember it being pretty hilarious because the baseball players were huge. Their necks were huge. And everybody said no. Everybody, nope, I didn't. I don't know anybody that did. I didn't. I don't know anybody that did. And then, but they had the report. They had some drug test results. And so most of the people that came in and said that they had not used any performance enhancing drugs, but had actually tested positive, they recommended that the Justice Department file perjury charges against them, lying to Congress charges. Roger Clemens, I think, was one. Barry Bonds was one. I'm dating myself. This was a while ago. But that is an example. Once they finished, made their recommendations, then that committee was over. Joint committees are committees that have members from the House and the Senate on them. They usually are investigating a huge issue and are making recommendations because the issue is going to take a while to resolve. And so they appoint these committees to work on issues and make recommendations. A conference committee, as I said before, is a special type of joint committee. Their job is to resolve differences when the House and the Senate have both passed bills and the bills don't match. Because only one bill that has been approved by both the House and the Senate can go to the president's desk. So you have to find a bill that both the House and Senate can agree on. So they go and negotiate and try to come up with terms in a bill that both the House and the Senate can approve. And then they issue a report and send it back to the House and Senate to be voted on. So very, very specific job for a conference committee. Now, what type of matters, policy areas, do committees hear? We refer to that as the committee's jurisdiction, the policy area in which the committee is authorized to act. Bills that are introduced, every bill that is introduced is referred to a committee, and they must be referred to the proper committee. Sometimes it's really, really clear. If you are, if the president has nominated a judge to be in a position and the Senate is trying to determine whether or not that judge should be seated, should be approved, that's going to go to the Judiciary Committee. Easy. If it is a question of national security or one of the intelligence agencies, the ones that we know and the ones that we don't, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, that's going to go to the Intelligence Committee. If it is a matter of, I don't know, banning a certain pesticide to be used on food, food that is going to be sold to the public, that's going to go to the Agriculture Committee. Sometimes it's a little unclear, and we saw a bit of that in the House during President Trump's impeachment hearings. That an inquiry was opened, and the Intelligence Committee conducted some hearings. So did the Judiciary Committee in the House. So sometimes it's not exactly clear, and those issues of where it will go are usually resolved by the Speaker of the House or the Majority Leader in the Senate. Committees are always seeking legislative influence. They carefully guard and sometimes argue about whether or not a certain bill or a certain matter should be referred to their committee. So you often will hear that party leaders will say, okay, we'll just divide this up and you guys can talk about this and you guys can talk about this, just so that you won't have battles or turf wars within the body about who gets to actually hear this bill. Now, why the heck does it matter? Why is it such a big deal? Well, in some instances, it literally comes down to camera time. Sometimes it has something to do with what is important to your state. So you want to be able to report to your constituents that you worked on this issue that is very important, and see, you can see me working because I'm on TV. Members of Congress love to be on TV. Membership. So who goes where and how many of each party are on the committees. This is also controlled by majority and minority. So if your party has the most people in Congress, and again, the Democratic Party, as of October 2020, has a majority in the House, and the Republican Party has a majority in the Senate. That party, whichever is the majority party, holds the most seats on each of the committees, so that they will have an advantage if they are voting on something. That advantage passes on to committees as well. Members of the House typically serve on 2 committees, sometimes 3. Senators often serve on 4 committees, and 2 of them being major committees and 2 not being major committees. So it can get really political, because again, you want to be on a committee, number one, that is important to your constituents, so you can say, look at the work that I've done. You're from Iowa or Nebraska, you probably want to be on the agricultural committee because that is a huge industry. um if you're from Texas, especially if you're from Houston or West Texas, then you probably want to be on the Energy Committee. The big committees in the House, the big one is Appropriations, because that is the committee that has the job of deciding how much money is going to go where. And so they propose budgets and they propose funding. The one of the chair of the Appropriations Committee is actually from Texas. She's actually from Fort Worth. It is a congresswoman named Kay Granger, and they sometimes call the people on the Appropriations Committee the Cardinals. Um, Talking about referring to the Catholic Church and the hierarchy of the church. These are the big decision makers that are closest to the Pope. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I don't think there's anybody between cardinals and the Pope. And so they are. It's a coveted place, and everybody wants to be on that committee, but only a select few are. So I'll leave it there. Committee chairs. Committee chairs are almost always, and really since the 90s, always in the majority party. And typically, they are the member of the majority party that has been on that committee the longest. We call that seniority. So there was a time when it was strict seniority. It didn't matter what party you were from. Oftentimes, the chairs of committee would just be the person that had served the longest. But when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House, and this was when Bill Clinton was president, so in the late 90s, Newt Gingrich said, you know what, that's silly. It's silly to have committees that have chairs that are not in line with majority leadership. And so he really kind of cut that out. And since then, since 1995, the seniority system, the pure seniority system has really kind of gone away. And sometimes the party will pick someone other than the person that has seniority to be the committee chair. So it has that is one tradition that has kind of gone the way of the dinosaur. So today, the committees are really kind of an instrument of the majority party. They again control the most seats, and the chair is going to be a member of the party, of the majority party. Committees really, especially standing committees, they do the work. They decide what bills are going to actually be debated and therefore eligible for being voted on and therefore in the pipeline to actually becoming a law. committees can and often do just set things aside and say that's not important, that's not something that we want to address, and a bill can go to a committee and just stay there. We call that pigeonholing. So there are chairs, there are co-chairs. Usually the co-chair is from the minority party, and they sometimes decentralize power and give some power to individual members, because you are in charge of your committee. You get visibility. You are looked at as leadership. They call on you from the networks to come and comment on things that are going on. You speak first when when there are hearings. You preside when there are hearings and tell people you can't say that, you can't do that. You're recognized. And so there is some power within the committees because they do the work. They do the work. So here are the list of the 20 House committees and 16 Senate committees. I told you guys about appropriations. There's also an appropriations committee in the Senate. There's education and workforce. And in the Senate, that is called health, education, labor, and pensions. There's the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, charged with deciding and approving every judge that is recommended by the president. There's a Judiciary Committee in the House. I am not exactly sure of their jurisdiction because approving judges is solely a Senate responsibility. So Judiciary Committee is all over the place. Another really big one is Ways and Means. So the two big ones in the House of Representatives are Appropriations and Ways and Means. Ways and Means decides the way that things will run, the process, the rules, and the tax implications. And Appropriations decides how much money will be allocated. So those are the two big ones. Both the House and the Senate have Veterans Affairs, Foreign Relations, and Foreign Affairs. And some of these committees do a lot of traveling. The Foreign Affairs and Foreign Relations Committee members do a lot of traveling and make a lot of contact with leaders in different countries so that they can fully understand policy. So again, this is October 2020. We are in the middle of a presidential election, and Joe Biden, who is the Democratic candidate, served in the Senate for years. He served on the Foreign Relations Committee, and he served as the chair of the Judiciary Committee. So we used to see, when I was a political science major and when I was in law school, you would see Joe Biden on a regular basis, a monthly basis, because between him traveling and understanding foreign policy and advising on foreign policy and being in charge of hearings where controversial judges were coming through and having hearings, you used to see Joe Biden all the time. He was a senator for years and years and years. So if you ever listen to him, and it's not very often that he starts talking about foreign policy, but he is real sharp on it, because that was the committee that he served on. And for the most part, because people keep getting reelected, they keep serving on the committees, they usually don't become chairs of these committees until they have seniority. They develop expertise. And you will see that over and over again, that the chairs of the committees, they know the subject matter that their committee works on backwards and forwards. So they become subject matter experts.